College sports is not a business, but there's business in college sports. The IP branding strength of a student athlete today is remarkable. A student athlete holds the ability in today's market to put butts in seats.
Joining us today is Bienko at the forefront of the NIL era, shaping how student athletes build and monetize their personal brands. Can you talk a little bit about your current venture with 42U and what you guys are doing?
What we got into is first helping the athletes discover their brand, then have the athletes develop their brand, now have the athletes activate their brand.
NIL is not new, but it's not old either. So if we're looking more in the future, where do you see NIL going?
You will see NIL majorly at the high school market. That'll be one of the biggest changes because this gives us an opportunity to educate younger, and at that stage, children. Athletes will be recruited not just based upon their physical abilities, but also their brand ability.
You have been a student athlete yourself, so how has that shaped the psychological and developmental pillars behind 42U?
When you talk about entrepreneurism, when you talk about building a business, there's two areas that become very important. Number one, where is your passion? And number two,
Bienko, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
It's great to be here, Marcus. Look forward to chatting with you. You've always had some really great guests on your show, so humbled to be on.
Appreciate that you are on, and you're another great guest for sure on this show. You are the co-founder of 42U. You're also have been a dual athlete, life coach, business executive. So can you talk a little bit about your current venture with 42U and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we jumped into the college sports world as we all know, unless you're somewhere under a rock, the college sports world has changed drastically. The landscape has really just exploded and imploded across many different paradigms. And I've always been very much in touch and supportive of the student athlete. That's always been near and dear to me. Obviously, most probably coming from my beginning roots. I owe a lot of my success in life to my journey through sport and what I did at the university level and the people I learned from at the university level. And so when the landscape changed in the college sports circle, I saw a tremendous opportunity to jump in with that passion. And at the age I'm at now, not just with the passion, but now also a little bit of more wisdom from the years that I've gone through in the different business ventures that I've had. So we saw a great opening on the educational side of the changing college landscape with the student athletes on straddling both sides, the new world of NIL, but also sometimes the forgotten world of life after sport and the true responsibilities of what universities are about.
Yeah, that's really important topics for sure. And I know that 42U, you are setting yourself apart from other organizations. You're using some unique psychological tests to analyze the students. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we're tapping into their true transferable skills. Right. This has been one of those topics when you hear about student athletes, right? You hear about it in the hiring world, in the HR world, that firms, organizations, corporate, Fortune 500 companies love hiring student athletes. Okay, why? Oh, they're great teammates. Well, not all of them. They're hardworking. Yes, but not all of them. They know how to show up on time. Yes, but not all of them. That's not a streamlined transferable skill. Yes, it's something that it is very much needed and probably a big part of the majority of student athletes, but that's really not why you should be hiring them. That's an added benefit and something that's very beneficial. However, what we're able to determine through our analysis is what are their true transferable skills that mentally made them very good athletes to the point that they were able to compete at a national, international level. What are those mental aspects that enabled them to survive in tough situations? What were the mental aspects that drove them to be very goal orientated, right? We generally consider student athletes or former athletes goal orientated. Not true for every single student athlete. And I'll keep repeating that because it's a fact. It's not true for all. It is something that is uh, assumed that every student athlete or every athlete is goal orientated. Some athletes are just gifted, boing, by God, that they're great athletes. And they have such incredible physical traits that they don't always need to be goal orientated. But let's find that in a student athlete. And so our analysis brings out the true transferable skills that have made them very competitive on the court, on the field, on the grass, on the pitch, wherever it may be, and how that transfers over into what they're majoring in and what they are interested in life after sport. And we compile that together with years of data from Fortune 500 companies, from high level Olympic athletes, high level collegiate, high level pro athletes, and executives from the vice president up, and what made them very good at their job. And we're able to now connect those traits that the student athlete conveys on the field and how that relates to them in their life after sports. So now we can actually communicate with them with why they would be a very good attorney, why they would be a very good podcast host, why they would be a very good coach, why they would be a very good medical sales representative. And so for some of the first times, we're really pulling their true transferable skills.
That's amazing. So you have been a student athlete yourself. So how has that shaped the psychological and developmental pillars behind 42U?
That's a super question, Marcus. And, you know, when you talk about entrepreneurism, when you talk about building a business, right, there's two areas that become very important. Number one, where is your passion? And number two, what solution do you have to solve a problem, right? Or what problem is there that you have a solution for? And if you can marry those two, that's a recipe for tremendous success, right? What you're passionate at, and then you have a solution to a problem. So when I was a student athlete, I knew years later that my issue on the field, whether it was on the football side of things or on the track and field side of things, my issue was that I overthought and I got myself into a mental predicament. And I knew that at the time I didn't realize it. So I just put more and more time into my physical activities, thinking I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't fast enough, all these different avenues that flow through your mind. When in reality, it was because my mental capacity for excelling in the moment when it came to a stopwatch or being observed, that's where I fell out of the zone. And I wasn't able to perform at the same level that I may perform in practice. And so this piece became a understanding why, or understanding my true traits, what made me, but what also made me a very good athlete, but then what inhibited me from becoming a great athlete. Finding that out was mind blowing to me. So the passion, if I can get this across to other student athletes that are at that age, number one, they can find ways to perform better now on the field. And then they can also realize that they are bigger than just being an athlete. They are more than just being an athlete. And that's another piece that came into the puzzle for me. You know, until I was 35, and this is another passion piece. Remember, we talked about being passionate about what you're diving into when it comes to business or entrepreneurism. Up until 35, I identified myself as an athlete. I completely identified as an athlete. And because of that, I made many mistakes or many decisions that I should not have made, both business and professionally. But if I had really known what my identity was beforehand, maybe I would have been happier at a certain stage of life. Maybe I wouldn't have gone down that path, or maybe I would have gone along with this partner over here versus that partner over there, both personally and professionally. And so I found that to be very important during these years. And that goes back to what we talked about, earlier in this, is that the universities really have a fiduciary responsibility to educate student athletes. And now today's world is just a change, right? That has also changed. And I love to dive into that at some point during this conversation. That is also changing in today's college sports world. The NIL brought the spotlight onto this new fascination of athletes being able to recoup revenue or income from their name, image, and likeness. It's a big, this is wonderful. Well, this should have been happening for years upon years upon years. This should have been going on since the beginning. If my roommate in college was able to come up with a business and use their name, image, or likeness, however they may use it, and they were allowed to do that, but because I was a student athlete, I wasn't allowed to do that because the NCAA forbade that. That is complete nonsense, right? And so to now we're up in arms and we're so excited about something that should have been offered and given for years, right? But what is also changing is how students today are, number one, receiving data, number two, what their goals and dreams and objectives are, and number three, how important their personal brand is to their success in life. We've gone through a major change. Now, the universities, especially on the athletic side, they have not caught up to that yet. So, what we're working to do is, number one, solve a problem on the NIL world. And we believe that problem is not so much about the deals, it's about the brand and understanding what the brand is, understanding what your brand is. Understanding what your brand is, and this is where I'm going to connect this right now. Understanding what your brand is knowing who you are. Identity. And so these two marriage together. So when you know who you are, you perform better on the field. When you know who you are, you're going to make better decisions in your life. When you know who you are, you can actually start living that brand of who you are. And then you can identify true partners in the NIL world. At the same time, this brand identity allows you to begin searching, communicating with businesses, organizations that you want to partner with, work for. And when you establish this brand, which universities now need to start evolving around, not just for NIL, but for how the market works today, how different corporations are viewing people through the HR spectrum, especially with the introduction of AI, right? It's no longer, if you're looking at a financial based analyst type job, let's be honest, how much longer is that really necessary for you to break for that entry level data analyst to break down all the models to present it to the higher up so they can make decisions? That's not, however, your thought process, how you communicate, how you relate, that becomes extremely important. That soft skill. And Adam Grant talks a lot about that in his recent book, right? He talks a lot about that transformation from the hard skill to the soft skill, right? And how we're going to make a major change in that level of importance. So we've interlocked and fused the two together, both on the NIL and the life after sport.
That's so interesting. And the identity piece is also really interesting because you said that identifying as an athlete, that means that if you get injured or when you're retiring from sports, then what are your identity then? Then you don't have one. But if you identify as Steven, then you're Steven and you can be that playing your sport or doing it after. I think the tricky part is with this when you're planning for after sport is like, are you then taking focus away from your sport? Like you need to find that balance. You're still giving it all to your sport, but you're also preparing yourself for a future after sport.
I Marcus, I'd love to have the study done on athletes' performance and when life is not all focused and concentrated on just your identification of being an athlete. Right? It's like the old saying in baseball, if you think you stink, right? And if you keep thinking about being an athlete, being an athlete, being an athlete, and then you're just completely consumed with that. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't stand by this, but just going to say, I guarantee you, when your mind is set free, you perform a lot better. And so knowing this identity becomes extremely important, right? Not having identity. What do we do when we don't know what our identity is? We search for one. And generally, when we search for one, that's not living within ourself. That's not living in a layer of authentic self. And I know that word has been played out so much, especially in the social media world, but I believe in the authenticity of self. And I'll keep saying it, even if that word is played out, because it is very important. It's very valid in how we go about life. When we start to search for identity, that's when you go to identify based upon ego or based upon wounds or based upon trauma or based upon preconceived perceptions, right? And that's when someone joins a group maybe they should not join. That's when someone gets into a relationship they maybe should not get into. That's when someone makes a decision based upon because they think that's going to service their identity. Is because they're ignorant of their identity. Really understanding that identity, I don't want to say solves all the problems, but it definitely makes things a lot more clear.
Mm, yeah. So, I mean, the idea with NIL is that you empower the athlete, right? So, why do you think that there are still so many that are underprepared, underprotected, and undervalued?
Well, in today's market, the college athletic system, this is one area with our business that we are working to do and why we felt so passionate in being a part of this and also being a part of this for the long haul, the legacy based, is that the college athletic world has not caught up yet. Everybody got in because so many backs are against the wall to make decisions that go out in the media. Let's go partner with this company over here because they're doing this NIL and they're doing this and they're doing that. You know how many universities have canceled those contracts? Because there were so many knee jerk reactions, because there's so much media around it. Everybody wants to just think they're getting in front of it. And that's why you've seen so many deals not really happen to the way they should happen. Yes, there are a plethora of great deals that go on, but the majority of those great deals are on two sides. Either that student athlete in college already had a brand, whether it's historical, family based, the Arch Mannings, the um, Shador Sanders, individuals like that that had a family brand already attached to them. That's one side. You have some athletes that created brands even before they were in college, like Olivia Dunn. And when these individuals were right there at the beginning of NIL and they were able to really catapult and blow up. But let's not fool ourselves. Those individuals already had brands. The universities didn't build those brands. Those young individuals built those brands when they were young, from the Travis Hunter to the Shador Sanders to Arch Manning because of the name and Livy Dunn. They built their brands when they were young, and when they got to college, they were able to catapult them. Right now, you see the other side is that you have a couple of student athletes who are just very good and very smart. Of hey, how do I create my own brand? And they're just intuitively doing it. Well, now as this cycle changes, my stance is college and universities, this is your responsibility to help these student athletes build their brands. For those that raise their hands to participate in NIL, and for those because they stepped into your university and at the end, they're graduating and getting a job and having a career and starting a family. And that is the real part of those purpose of those 4 to 5 years. And we've gotten it wrong because so much was placed on this big dollar situation, these signing these large contracts, agents jumping in, management companies jumping in, and everybody trying to get a piece of this pot. When why would some of these brands even partner with the student athletes? They don't have a brand. Why would this multi-million dollar brand partner with a student athlete? For what reason? Just because it's a student athlete? What point does that in business relay to that CMO as to, am I going to get a return on this, or am I just doing this because we feel like throwing some money around? After a while, that gets very stale and very old. Once the PR died down on a lot of the organizations throwing money at the athletes, once that PR died down, now it's a thinking process. Now it's, is this really valuable? And when you are partnering with someone without a brand, you're not going to see the result. And what we got into is first helping the athletes discover their brand, then have the athletes develop their brand, now have the athletes activate their brand. And I always want to preface this because the same thing, one thing goes for NIL, the same thing goes for life after sport. It's all the same. And when you think about name, image, and likeness, NIL, when you're being hired, when you're interviewing for that medical sales device job, you got into the interview process because you had the resume, you had the grades, you had the graduate, you had the degree. That got you into the pool. When you're being interviewed, and when they come down to the hiring process, they are hiring you now because of your name, image, and likeness. Let's not mistake this. You were being hired because of your name, image, and likeness. And if you didn't know what that is, how are you going to relay that to that medical sales device company? You have to know, does my brand align with their brand? Because that's how I'm going to get hired here. And that's how I'm going to recognize, do I even fit in this role? Right? The same thing we're doing in the transfer portal. We're having athletes evaluate, or even in the beginning signing period coming in high school. You're analyzing, do I fit in this university? I have two children going through the college process now. You know how many visits I've done this summer of visiting colleges and universities throughout the Northeast and the Southeast? I've put thousands of miles in the car. Why do we do that? You go there to determine, am I a fit for this school? Do I feel it when I go there? Is this something that a place that I want to go? The same thing the athletes are doing. Do I fit in this program? Do I fit with this coach's culture? Do I fit within the playbook? So you should be asking yourself the same question. Do I fit in this company? And I think this is something that in this generation that we have to get used to, because they know they have these decisions. They know they have options. They know if I put my time into it, I can become have a YouTube podcast, and I can earn a living doing that if I want to. And I work hard and I learn how to do it properly over the course of time. I can build myself up that can be my structured job, and I can have employees that are all part of my show and my broadcast. They know these things are options. So we need to help get them there. We need to help them identify what that brand is, help them develop it, and then help them activate it.
I love that. And the alignment that you mentioned there is so important, right? Because if you said there is a company that they throw money on this college athlete and they are a diaper company and this kid has no kids and it doesn't make sense, right? It's just they throwing money at it and then it will die out. If you want to have a true partnership and something that you can align with longer, it needs to be something that, I mean, it makes sense that they have something in common, that you said that their brands align somehow.
It's so funny, Marcus, that you bring that up, because years ago, I remember I was in a conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk many years ago, and Gary V, and we were talking about this, and this is 15 years ago or so, at least 15 years ago, maybe more. And we were talking about how the age of just trusting what somebody said in an ad is over. This generation, this young generation, they don't just believe the ads. They don't just believe that just because so and so says that you should wear Hanes underwear, that I'm going to wear Hanes underwear. That is over, right? There has to be, go back to that word, authentic, authenticity, right? Well, then what are we doing in college athletics right now? Literally, we have older people creating these non-authentic deals with student athletes. Just hold up a Celsius can. We're still doing that. We're still just holding up a Celsius can saying, hey, thank you very much for this partnership. Drink Celsius. That generation already knows they don't believe that nonsense. Right? How do you create the alignment to know that, hey, that athlete is someone, if you're going to work with Celsius, that athlete is a diehard. They're going after it. They're grit. They need the energy. And they've been showing that for a long period of time. So you know, yeah, that person probably does drink that Celsius. Or that person does wear aloe, right? Know what the brand of aloe is really about, right? Know what it represents. And make sure that that's aligned. I'm not saying Aloe's not doing it right, because they actually are doing a really good job. I'm using it because I actually do like that company and I wear their clothing. They actually do a really good job in their partnerships, but we're not aligning properly. And then we're still doing that basic low key advertisement without real brand alignment. And that's where we saw a major problem and wanted to come up with a solution that fit both sides, because there is a lot of money to be made in sports, right? College sports is not a business, but there's business in college sports. And when you find that, but when you develop a business, it takes time. You have to educate, you have to build, and then you make the money. So, in the college sports world, yes, in today's society, student athletes, athletes in general, are gateways to communication, broadcasting, um, uh, the ability to market, to brand, to advertise, community awareness, civil rights awareness. Athletes are a real vessel for that. The IP branding strength of a student athlete today is remarkable. And the reason why is not that student athletes change, is how we communicate it has changed. When you have the ability for 3,000 young 12 to 15-year-olds to be able to meet up at a mall at a certain time, and they all get there at the same time because somebody started that line of communication that has a broad reach of people, there you know where the power is. And that little microcosm of watching what's going on, right, versus complaining about it. See, I'm looking at that saying, okay, 3,000 kids are showing up at a mall. And this just happened in Jersey about 2 weeks ago with the whole trend of quarter zip and matcha, right? That whole trend that's hit TikTok. Well, they did a quarter zip and matcha meetup at one of the big malls in New Jersey in the United States. Over 3,000 kids showed up. How was that possible? Because of the way they communicate, because somebody with brand equity and brand power started pushing that out, that this is going to meet, and it just rolls like a wildfire. So think about that. Now you're talking about 12 and 15-year-olds. So there's a 14-year-old there with enough brand equity that they fire started that and got that rolling, where it eventually rolled out to 3,000 young people who all showed up at the mall at the same time. That's a model to begin thinking about. And it just shows you that a younger generation is more likely to believe and follow their peers through their peer-to-peer communication than they are watching on TV or looking in a magazine. And that brings the IP power to that student athlete.
Mm, that's very interesting. And what you mentioned now, the younger generation, they are different. They communicate different. I'm 32 years old. I'm feeling like I don't understand the 20-year-olds in my office. And based on that, you said that you have kids in college. I assume that you are a little bit older than I am. So how do you, I mean, it's very important in your work to keep up with what's happening, obviously, and to give advice to young people. So how are you staying up to date and be able to mix, your experience that you have had, but also with what's happening right now in the world? What's the trends?
I think it's staying curious. Hey, Marcus, I'm 50, so I've got a lot of years, but that allows for something very special, right? That allows, and just because, and not I'm not no special than anybody else, but just because, hey, I've been on this earth for 50 years now, I've accumulated knowledge because of that. That's it. No different than you, and you'll accumulate that knowledge in the next 18 years, right? So because of that, I've been able to accumulate knowledge. But staying curious is how you stay effective. And I'm very curious as to how a young generation communicates. Yes, to stay somewhat relevant in the lives of my children who range from 18 to 6 weeks old. So I have a long range there that I want to stay active in my personal life, but then in business, that I am curious as to why they communicate in a certain way, why it's important for them to have those layers of communication. How are they communicating? What inspires that communication? So I think, staying curious, and that's leadership, isn't it? Right? Leadership is, you can only lead by first understanding the people around you. And so if I want a company to grow and build within this market, that means I'm going to have people, peer to peers, that are in our company who really can understand and really know and live that demographic. But I have to lead that demographic as well. So I have to humble myself and basically say, I don't know anything. And that thought process of going into each day that I don't really know anything yet. And I think that inspires you to want to learn more and stay curious. And the more curious you are, the more you begin to accumulate and learn. And then you start putting pieces together. And I love being able to put together the old versus the new. And I do think that a lot of ways that I personally live are, how my parents brought me up. And not that there's anything wrong with how they brought me up. So I can pull, hey, what were they teaching and how does that relate today? Because now I can do it with the same value, just in today's marketability. Same way you're looking at selling a product. It's the same product. You just have to communicate the product in a different way. But as humans, we needed that same product 20 years ago that we need today. We just have to explain it in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think staying curious is extremely important for success in today's society.
I would agree with that. And I think Simon Sinek said that the best leaders are students of leadership. So it's a little bit what you say as well, that you're curious and you're taking learnings, even though you're in a leadership position.
Yeah, I like to say I mean the same thing as Simon. He just says it a heck of a lot better.
So, I mean, I love the fact that you're not just making a quick buck out of a NIL. Like you have this huge opportunities, commercial opportunities when this starts, and you could just take this huge deal from a large corporation, take a cut, and making money. But you're seeing the big picture here. If we look a little bit in the future, like a couple of years ahead, NIL, it's not new, but it's not old either. So if we're looking more in the future, where do you see NIL going?
Well, wow. Number one, I see NIL as too much upsetness or anger or squirmishness this may cause for people, but you will see NIL majorly at the high school market. So let's start there, right? That'll be one of the biggest changes. Now, the big change is that now this is wonderful because this gives us an opportunity to educate younger, and at that stage, children. We can educate them at a much younger age as to what it means. And what's one of our, and this is very interesting how this comes in play, what's one of the areas of our educational department that we have consistently failed our students in the United States? Financial literacy. We have failed our students over, and even to this day, I look at my young children who I've still one just finished up middle school. Why are you not taught financial literacy in the classroom? We're still learning algebraic math, but we're not learning financial literacy, the basic understandings of money, right? So, still to this day, so I think this will, even if it doesn't come directly from the educational system, it will come from third parties, right? And that's a beautiful power of capitalism, right? And how that works is that if there is an issue, a third party will come and support that in this mind. So I think we're going to see that at the high school level. We're going to see a drastic change in that. You're going to see the college athletic programs change from fundraising based to revenue generation based. And not fully like a corporation, but you're going to have a little bit more of a mix of a 50-50, where you're going to have a good focus on donor relations, and that's going to become a big part of it. But a turn to where revenue generation becomes a very important and a big area of an important area of the athletic department and who works at the athletic department. So you'll see that changing guard. So with the changing guard of that, you also see a changing guard of employment versus administrative based people at the athletic departments to business management marketing, right? You'll see a nice mix in between where at the table you'll find a business oriented mindset, a visionary based mindset, and an administrative based mindset sitting at the same table, which is not very common in the athletic in the college athletics sector. Okay,
Mm.
you're going to see universities attaching more to the brands of the athletes. You'll see the recruitment of athletes not just based upon physical abilities, but brand ability. Let's think that through. Athletes will be recruited not just based upon their physical abilities, but also their brand ability. Because in order to financially build more equity at the university's athletic department, you have to not just use the IP of the university, but the IPs of the student athletes, the intellectual property of the student athlete, the brand of the student athlete. Because as we've seen, the brand of the student athlete puts butts in seats. At the end of the day, when you look at some certain job descriptions, look at a um, athletic director's job description. There's always in every job description of that athletic director one of those bullet points, and they say it a different way, but I say it this way: one of your key job metrics is putting butts in seats, because when there's a butt in a seat, now there's new opportunities. There's new opportunities for engagement. There's new opportunities for revenue generation. There's new opportunities for experience. There's new opportunities for applications to increase. We look at what the prime effect was at University of Colorado. Yes, it was great, and people can talk all they want about the record, the wins and losses, this and that. However, at the university level, their admissions, their applications went up by about 30 something percent. Now, that's an important metric at the, because at the end of the day, the athletic department is just a portion of the university. So that athletic director's job is to put butts in seats. And a student athlete, and we have learned this, a student athlete holds the ability in today's market to put butts in seats because you're following the athlete in social media. And general psychology shows that our relationship between two humans is more powerful between a relationship between a human and a company. Your consumer to consumer, your C to C relationship is more valuable than your C to B relationship. If I'm hearing something and I'm following the athlete and they're talking about their big game coming up, I'm more likely to attend that athletic event because I heard from the student athlete, or I saw their post, or I watched their video, than I am to getting an ad or a social media post or a TV commercial from the university itself. So we'll see that change from the high school level and the development all the way through to the college use of the student athlete's IP to drive more butts and seats.
Mm. That's really interesting. And I just feel like I'm working in the ice hockey industry and also working with a lot of, players, young, older. Some guys are amazing on the ice, on the field. They're, the most creative. They are scoring goals. Off the ice, they are dull, to be fair, to be fair. So what you're saying, like to put butts in seats, does it have to be like when you're saying the personal brand, can the brand be that they're just a great player of that sport? Or does it have to be that extra X factor type of thing?
That's a really good point and a really good question, Marcus. And it's twofold, right? You have to have this balance, and that's what you're going to see as well. You're going to see a balance between, because at the end of the day, it's sports. Everybody wants to win, but you don't need to win to drive revenue. Because a sporting event is also an entertainment event. A sporting event, especially at the collegiate level, is also a family event. If you're putting on a great show in a great environment and people believe and they feel connected, they still come, win or lose. The wins could diminish the culture, but that doesn't have to be the fact. You can still hold a strong culture and still have a 500 type season. I'm not saying you can have a one win season out of 15 games and repeat that over and over again, that you're going to maintain a culture. That's just fact. That's not going to happen. But you can maintain a very positive, eventful, enthusiastic culture with 500 seasons and maybe a 600 season. And then maybe you have a big season that because you happen to have two really good players on your hockey team that year, and they were exceptional on the ice. And that year, you went to the championship. Celebrate, give back, wonderful. But what got you there was the culture. What got you there was a mix of, I've got players and I also have communicators, entertainers, just good people that, hey, I want to go to the game because I feel connected with that student athlete. I feel connected with that coach, the human connection. So you do need a mix of both, right? Just because you're a star in the sport does not make you a branding star. It'll have people come to the game that are pure athlete orientated, that want to see a great athlete perform, let's say hockey on the ice. You have those diehards that come for that. But then you have people just come because it's a great time. I want to see some people get hit. I want to see a good game. I love the cheering and the camaraderie, or I just want to take my family because my young daughter is an aspiring hockey player. So we go, right? And then we bring friends, and it was a good experience. And we buy the gear and we go back again. That becomes a big part of it. So it is a mix of both. And we have to remember, in the world of athletics, there are your one percenters. And then in the rest of the 99, the comparisons athletically are very, very, very close. There's not that much that differentiates them, right? You have your elite class of athletes, and they separate themselves physically and mentally, emotionally from the rest. And we all know who they are. And the rest, there's layers of it, but in reality, it's not that noticeable. You can win or lose with them. It's the interchanging of them. It's the culture of the team. It's the coaching. It's what type of players you have together. The outliers will always be outliers, and you look for them to make the big scores and the big games and whatever it might be, and they will be there to be able to do that. And that might win you a championship. But to win consistently and over again, it's not always just because you have the superstars. It's because you have a great alignment of a variety of players that fit well together, and then they play well together, and that creates a good outcome.
Yeah, I love that. So let's get to know Steven a little bit more. I mentioned in the beginning that you were a dual athlete playing football and track and field. So tell us a little bit how, your journey in sports and up until this point.
My journey in sport was based upon, although football was my big love, right? And that's where all my dreams were. My life has been about being a decathlete. And I say it with that in that way because my personal profile is truly a profile of a decathlete. And to get to know me is to know what makes a decathlete. A decathlete loves to train. A decathlete loves the journey. A decathlete finds happiness and joy in the camaraderie of working out, training, getting better. A decathlete cheers on the person that's working next to them, even though they're both going for the same goal. They still have the ability to cheer them each other on because you're there for the journey, not just the victory. And as a decathlete, you have to be curious about trying, knowing that you never will, but you set the sight on trying to master all and get better and better at all the different events. And when you know you have a strong spot, you rely upon that strong spot, but you're driven to always get better at the areas that you are weak in. And you keep trying to figure that out. And that's sort of me. You ask that question, get to know me. That is me in a nutshell. I enjoy the journey in business. I have a vision and I love building it. And I am building that vision not with the idea of, oh, I have to make $1 million. No, I would love to make the $1 million. Just like I would love to win the championship. I would love to win the decathlon at that event. But I'm more in love with the process than I am in the reward of it. And so part of that um, may be an area of my weakness as well. That in the cutthroat world of corporate life or the cutthroat world of entrepreneurism, sometimes you get places by being focused on the reward. Well, that's not me. And so I do enjoy the process. I do enjoy the buildup. I do enjoy the camaraderie of people. And I love trying to find a solution to a problem. And
That's
that
great.
inspires me.
That's great skills to have for sure. And that tells a little bit of who you are as a person. And you were a dual athlete. You're also, but now an entrepreneur, life coach. So after you said you did both sports. So from that point on, did you have to choose sports? When did you move on to other ventures?
So I did both of my sports through college. And so that ended at the end of college, and I went upon my next venture. And not knowing what I wanted to do in life, I actually started off by being a state trooper, which is a state policeman in the state of New Jersey, United States. So I started off there. But where I was really finding my enjoyment was that I had just finished my football and track and field career only months before. And so I was still going out and working out on the local tracks and running and staying fit for my job, but also because I love the journey of fitness and training. That's always been something I've loved to do. How far can I push my body? How long can I stay young? right? I've always enjoyed that. And so I was out there working out, and in the midst of that, I saw a problem that there were young kids out there working out with their moms and dads. Their moms and dads had absolutely no idea what they were doing trying to teach their kids how to run. And I saw that I have a solution to that. With all my years of training, with all my love of it, I can teach your child to run. And so I set out to do that just out of my own time when I was at the track. And I eventually turned that into a business. And that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor, was opening up athletic training centers to provide athletic training, both mentally, physically, and emotionally, for young people, high school and college athletes. And that grew into a business model of, duplicated that, built multiple facilities, and was at the early onset of the athletic training world.
Amazing. And life coach, is that part of that as well? Or how does one define a life coach?
So that was always part of it. So my life coaching came later when I had experiences. This is one thing, I'll put it out there. I don't like, it upsets me when there's life coaching without experience of life. Right? Let's just lay that out there. Right? Coaching takes experience. You can't just read something, you can't just watch something. Coaching of that level takes experience. Right? It's just like parenting. There's no book for it. There's really no right book. It's experience. And you get better at it through experience. You get better at parenting when you wake up the next day and you realize, that wasn't the best way to approach that. Okay, so today I'm going to approach it this way, and I'm going to do better today, right? I'm going to have more patience today. I'm going to say what I want to say differently. I'm going, whatever that might be, right? So parenting is an evolving, it comes from experience. Life coaching comes from experience. And I started life coaching when I was about 40 years old, and that began that journey where I had layers of experience, whether that was business, whether that was failed relationships, whether that was children, whether that was failed businesses, succeeding businesses, whatever it might be. Like, that started coming together at that age where I had a multitude of experiences. And how can I use my experiences to help others? And that's where then the studying came in. So now you start studying the background of it, the psychology of it, the business side of it, and the relationship side. And you study it so that you have more intellectual information to be used along with your experiences. Because what did we start off by saying? Leadership is about understanding. You can't lead without understanding, and you can't understand without knowing what you're understanding. So that's where the life coaching comes in. And I think that has also helped in this venture with 42, is the experiences there, and knowing how people operate, how they tick, and how to incorporate this into a young person's mind coming through college, how to help the administrators through this process, right? Part of what we're doing is trying to expand this business. A lot of it comes from, we have to educate, and education takes patience. And we're not only educating the young student athletes 18 to 24 years old, we're also educating the administrators in this, who know a whole lot about what they do. But right now in the college sports world, this new world is not what they know. And that's okay. They know what they do know, and they're going to begin adapting and learning this new world. Well, part of our goals is to be one of the educators so that they can learn more, student athlete can learn more.
Hmm. I like that. So, and now you're at the 42U. Where did the name come from?
So the name is established by the number 42, held by the great Jackie Robinson. And the reason for it is that Jackie knew. So Mr. Robinson knew that baseball, athletics, was only a platform for who he really was and what he really represented. And he used that platform to make change. And so, in honor and representation of what those two numbers together means, that 42 is our ability to work with athletes, to educate them, to brand them, to develop them, to activate them, that they can use this part of their life as a platform to catapult them into different areas of life, but also to learn who they really are so that they can take that platform and exhibit who they are in life in general. So it comes from Jackie, and we hold that very tight into the culture, into the mantra of our organization.
I love that. I usually ask what company names come from, and sometimes it doesn't mean anything really, but many times, as you said, it really has a meaning.
Yeah, it does. It does, and we hold that very tight, and that's always it's like, what are you doing it for? Right. And when it's tough and when it's hard and when the deal's not coming through or it's difficult in building a business and what it represents, you remember what you're doing it for and what it represents. And that is a major assistance in keeping going.
Yeah. So I mentioned before we hit record here that a lot of listeners are in the high school, college age. So what would be some advice that you have for a person who wants to get into the sports industry?
Well, I think right now is a tremendous time to get into the sports world. The reason being is that the barriers of entry, which for years have been very tight, it's hard getting into the sports world. It's one of the most coveted and toughest worlds to get into. It's one of the reasons why, and this is like an economic study. There's one of the reasons why so many of the wages at the college level are so low to start. Right? Let's put those two and two together. Why are they so low to start? Because it's so hard to get in, and people will do whatever it takes to get into the world, into that world. So when people do whatever it takes to get there, economics speaks, well, we can set the financial bar really low because they just want an opportunity, right? Which um, I hope that changes drastically. But this is a tremendous opportunity. If you are interested in the world of sports, if you're interested in the world of college athletics, this is a great time. Even if you've been standing on the sideline, if you've been standing on the sideline unable to get in, there are a multitude of companies and organizations that are working directly with the colleges and universities. You don't always have to work with the colleges and the universities. It's a great career doing that. It's fun, it's enjoyable, but that is, in today's world, that is not your only entry point anymore. Right? You can go the route of working third party, being aligned with the university, speaking to them, working with the athletes, whatever it might be, and then you could parlay that into the university if you'd like to. Or if you're in the university right now and you're moving through the process, don't be afraid to jump into one of the third party companies. They're all going to interact soon. They're all going to depend upon one each other soon. Just like we mentioned early on, Marcus, regarding that there's a changeover from a donor based focused approach to college athletics to a revenue generating and a fusion of that together. The same thing, the fusion of admin with entrepreneurial business minded people, the same areas, that there's a fusion between the university athletic structure and the third party structure, together, working together in order to create relationships, to build the supporting mechanisms for the student athletes, to educate them and to provide for them, and at the end of the day to also to make money for the universities and the businesses. The businesses need the universities to earn revenue, and the universities need the third party businesses to increase their revenue generating model. So there's a beautiful fusion today. So if you are interested in the college athletics world, realize that this is definitely that moment of being able to get in, without always having to go through the university ranks.
Yeah. Perfect time to get into sports.
It really is.
Uh, it's been a wonderful 1 hour here with you, Stephen. I like to end on a networking question. So, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this show?
Um, wow, that's a good question. Actually, I think, because I really believe in her forward thinking in the college sports world, I think the new AD at Rutgers University, Kelly Zinn, would be a tremendous guest on your show. She has definitely what it takes in a vision mindset of where the world of college athletics is going, what is needed, both old school and new school. She understands branding. She understands the needs of the college athlete, and she knows the business model. So I think she'd be a fantastic guest on your show.
That's a great suggestion. Steven, thank you so much for taking the time to join Sports Management Podcast.
Thanks, Marcus. It's been a pleasure.